Our next speaker is Dr. Marlene Nobre. Dr. Nobre is a gynecologist with specialization in cancer prevention. She is the president of the International Spiritist Medical Association and has fostered the foundation of several Spiritist associations around the world, including in Colombia, Portugal, Spain, England, and United States of America. She's also the author of many books on the theme, spirituality and medicine, and other related topics. Please welcome Dr. Marlene Nobre.
First of all, I would like to apologize because I'm going to be speaking Portuguese. I still have some sort of trauma to be able to talk in English, this beautiful language. I'm sorry. Today, I'm going to be talking about this medium, the speed that you're seeing in which he rides. It's something real. This picture, it's not in fast or in a speedy manner. He used to write that fast. Medium Chico Xavier used to write that fast. He used to receive his messages in such a speedy way. Okay, now it's right. The medium received over 460 books by automatic writing or psychography. And among his mediumship tasks, he psychographed letters to family members of the sitters, or the people that came to see him. My brother Paulo Rossi Severino, he conducted 160 reviews following a standard questionnaire. And 45 cases of those were published. And these 45 cases were placed in such a way as to be understood through a computer research study. This is the city where he was born. Chico Xavier was born in 1939. Pedro Leopoldo is the name of the city. And in 1958, when he left his native town, he went to Uberaba, another city in the state of Minas Gerais, and a region called Triângulo Mineiro. This is his house where his mother died when he was only 5 years old. His father, João Cândido Xavier, that was his father's name. He worked in the textile industry, and he used to sell lottery tickets to survive. He loved to sing, he loved music, he loved serenades, and Chico Xavier used to be with him in the serenades. The family was the picture that you just saw, and the 45 cases that I'm going to be reporting to you today, it was a study that was conducted from 1975 to 1990 by the Spiritist Association in São Paulo, the Spiritist Medical Association in São Paulo, and this was reanalyzed in 2012, this year. We haven't finished that work. It's a work in progress, this reanalysis, but it will be submitted to publication next year. The author is Paulo Rossi Severino. He's my biological brother. who conducted the study, Maria Júlia Prieto Pérez, who's the mother of Julio Pérez that just spoke to you. She's also a physician, Marlene Nobre, myself, and Giancarlo Luchetti, who is conducting the reanalysis efforts. So how did we carry out this study? Well, we went for the interview of the people that had received the psychograph messages. The informers were selected in accordance with the sessions that they sat in, where they received Chico Xavier's messages in Uberaba, Minas Gerais, Brazil, or that way referred by other people that would send to us the names of people that received messages. And the informers were individually interviewed, and these interviews would be carried out for 3 hours. Sometimes it would last 3 hours. And these interviews were performed at least 20 days after the message was delivered to the sitter, to the informer. And we had several possibilities of this possibility being delivered to us. It was not conducted in São Paulo, in the city that we live in. It was conducted somewhere else. And we try to evaluate the evidence of each piece of information that was included in the message. We established in this study a classification that was based on the possibility that the medium could have some knowledge of certain information through conversations or previous research. So we are doing the reanalysis now and putting that together so that the medium maybe would have known or learned that information through previous conversations or previous research that was conducted. And we are trying to classify that in possibilities for the medium, knowing or not, going from a minimal possibility of knowing or learning about some facts, minimal to small, small, moderate, high. We took into consideration some general facts. Let's see some of the information, some general information that are non-specific, like general terms, like, for instance, using mom or grandpa or daddy, or something like that. Some names that the medium would have known. Many times we do know that Chico Xavier didn't know anything about the cases that he gave information on. And the high possibility of that medium knew the information was father's name, mother's name, names of siblings, girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses, children, and the date of the death, the cause and place of death, occurrences of the day, period of death, illnesses, date of birth, and so on and so forth. Because there's this bias or lack of trust on the case of sometimes in some interviews, the mothers or the fathers would then mention their names or some pieces of information. But we are going to see that was practically impossible because he would see people on Friday from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. He would see 60 people. And very seldom he would have the time to be for more than 3 to 4 minutes with a sitter. Degrees of certainty. Moderate possibility that the medium would know some of this information. For example, grandparents' names, the profession of the person that was there, the sitter, the informer, the period of the day in which the death occurred, past facts common to the profession, the study, in the house or the home, and small possibility that the medium would know some of the information. It would be great-grandparents' names, name of close relatives or friends, nieces and nephews, relatives in general, and especially the minimal possibility of Chico Xavier knowing the signature, and even more than that, how the person would spell that name. And this almost impossibility of receiving a signature that is quite identical to the deceased, to the person that passed. A very small possibility that medium would know would be names of distant relatives, childhood occurrences, nicknames that were used within the family circuit, or facts that were only known by family members. Minimum possibility that medium would know would be the name of unknown people. For instance, names of unknown family members, or facts that not even the family would know that were revealed through the message by Chico Xavier. In 1990, with the book Life Triumphs, we published 45 cases that were evaluated in an initial study. And now in 2012, we are reanalyzing. We have 38 cases that have already been reviewed and reanalyzed based on the work that we did in 1990. These 1990 cases that are in this book, Catholics would go after the informers, those people that were interviewed, following the questionnaire and answering the questionnaire. We had lots of Catholics, as you can see in the pie chart. We have some Spiritists, we have some Jewish people, evangelical, Protestant people in African religions, and atheists as well. We were also able to map the dates in which the deaths occurred, from 21 to 30 years, 11 to 20 years, and over 30 years. And also children were able to come and give their report with 10 years old or less than 10 years old. Gender of the person reporting, of the spirit reporting, we had much more males and females. So there is quite the opposite of the result of Dr. Paris's slide, because the men were more frequent in communicating than women. And we asked Chico Xavier, this #1 medium in Brazil, why does this happen? Because the man is there on the back, much more than on the front as women. and the religion of the person that is communicating. And we see that 62.30% they're Catholic people, and 20% of Spiritist, and other religions you can see in the pie chart. This is very, very important, the chart, because we can put it together with the religion of the person that gave the interview. We can see that the parents became spirits after receiving the message from the deceased. In terms of cause of death, we have 73.10% of accidents, and then 18% of natural causes, death by natural causes. We have also murders and suicides reported. This is very interesting because in the 45 cases that were analyzed, we had great variety, or the word 12 different things in terms of accident-related death. We have an object, it was an impact, it was a roof, a piece of the roof that fell on the, or a roof tile that fell on somebody's head in a church in the state of São Paulo. We had also someone that suffered an airplane accident or a crash, another train accident or gunfire, or because it was a drug addict and overdosed, bicycle accidents, the people that were burned. We had 12 different causes of death that we analyze, and we can then remember how difficult it is for someone to receive the message in such a fast way as you saw him receiving, that he could not really be making this up, and the description of death that were heard of, such as the roof tile that fell on somebody's head and killed that person. The description of the death, 75.60%, the description is present. And time between death and the communication through Chico Xavier, it varied a great deal, as you can see on the chart, from several months to years, and that follows a plan that we don't know very well about. But when the phone rings from beyond here, is for us to have an idea that everything is guided and we obeys a plan from beyond here. And the question would be, had Francisco Xavier known the informer before death occurred? 93.30% of the time he didn't know. He didn't know the family, he didn't know anything. Words that were only found related to the personality of the informer. 55.60% of the cases we didn't have these specific words, but on the other hand, in 44.40% of the cases, the family members would recognize words that were used by the deceased, and also some unique phrases. 40% of these phrases were identical to those that the deceased used to say when he or she was alive, and the same style of speech. There were certain pieces that were written in poetry, for instance. And in the interview, we heard from the mother or from the father that the son or the daughter would be a poet or would like to write poetry. And there was a prosecutor that had been murdered, and he used to leave little notes to his wife in reminding her of things in English. And when he sent the message to Chico Xavier, he behaved the same way. He wrote some sentences in English to her, to his wife. And these are things that really define the personality of the person or of the spirit that's communicating. And there is also a comparison between the signature in the message and the communicator's signature. And we saw different ones, 42.20, it was different, 22.20 was similar, but we had 35.60% of the cases. It was identical. Look at this one here. You have an idea what happened in this case. This Hilda Mascaro Salvo. She used to live in Italy. And her son, the person that received the message, he used to live in São Paulo. So when he went to see Chico in Uberaba, he received a message in Italian from his mother. And you can see there the message is in Italian. And look at the signature. That's her signature, the mother's signature, and it was submitted to an expert from Banco do Brasil in graphoscopy, and he attested it was identical. The signature was identical. Look at this Mauricio's ID signature, and you can see the message by Chico Xavier, his signature. So compare the signature on the left and on the right, and you can see it's identical. Here, the number of people who considered the communication as authentic. Because in the interview, my brother used to include that those that are close to family, those that are not close to the family, and that could really leave their opinion behind. You can see that over 3 people really validated the message. 88.90% of the cases, they authenticated. They said, this is true. And the conditions in which the message was received. It was close to 300 people. 93.30% of the cases, there were 300 people in the room. It was in these environments, very simple, very informal, in Uberaba, that the medium used to receive the messages. Then he changed to a bigger space. Here you can see some other important data. The average age of the communicators was 20.76, and the average high message was 874.97. Here you can see the average information per message. There are generic facts. General facts 716, high possibility of the medium knowing about some of the information. 703, moderate possibility. 253, small possibility. 239, very small possibility of him knowing. 242, and minimal possibility 0.24. General facts that are verified in several of the messages, like dear mommy, dear daddy, or dear grandpa. Oh, let's continue acting and doing good. And a hug, giving you a hug when I returned home after each and every period of absence. These are things that touch the heart but are general in nature. The high possibility that the medium knew about what he was talking about. Like, however, I want to tell my dad Osvaldo or Oswald. That would be the name of the father, like such as the case in number 23. My mom Araci, case 24. These are names that are in the messages, and these are the case numbers that have been analyzed, case 23, 24, and then the occurrences on certain dates, like February 14th, which is the date of death of the person in case number 9. So this is high possibility that the medium knew the facts that as they were being transcribed or received through automatic writing. Moderate possibility that the medium knew. I pray you treat me like before, drawing and photographing. Why? Because the person had a studio at home, he used to draw, he used to take pictures, and he had enlarged films and pictures, and that is case number 8. But Chico Xavier didn't know about that. That's another quotation. Without forgetting the thoughts of love of Grandma Carolina, that was the maternal grandmother that had passed away in January 23rd, 1949, and that was in the 70s. The message was given in the 70s. And in case 14, he wrote, that's why the Flying Club earned me. That's the club where he lost his life while he was learning to be a pilot. A small probability that the medium knew. That means that the person talks about Gerald or Geraldo in Portuguese, and talks about Sister Neinzinha. And this nickname, Neinzinha, was only known by the family. That's case number 16. And he makes some reference to his great-grandfather Frederico and his grandfather Manuel, and that's case number 28. And José Roberto Chabi. This is a pseudonym that was used. It's a very interesting case, this case number 7, because maybe he was a very sensitive child. He was a painter. He knew how to draw. He knew how to take pictures very well. And because he knew so much and he was so sensitive, he was called gay. He was... They used to call him names, gay, and like queer, and this sort of name calling. So he took that to his mother, and he said, "Okay, they are entitled to their opinion. I'm going to adopt a name instead of being called." Bisha in English is Shabi, which is the 2 syllables. Instead of Bisha, queer, he would put Shabi, and he put that in his ID. And then he signed the message as Shabi. So it's a strong piece of evidence. That is true, and the medium didn't know anything about that. Couldn't have known that. A too small possibility that the medium knew about such fact is when the person communicating describes a Dr. Pedro, case number 41. He was a neurosurgeon. Dr. Pedro was a neurosurgeon that was there with the deceased and took care of him when he was there at the hospital. The doctors didn't know, nobody knew about that, not even the family members. And then through his research, it was then found out that the neurosurgeon that took care of him was Dr. Pedro. Another case was case number 16. He had a friend called Jose, and he used to call Zé da Brahma, nickname. Brahma is a beer, a brand in Brazil. So nobody knew about that. Chico didn't know about this friend, and the family didn't know this nickname, and this person also died during the accident. And also a very small possibility of the media knowing about the facts is the case that number 9 that refers to Wilma. Wilma was a maid at the person's house, and Chico didn't know about that maid's existence. So we have to remember that in Portuguese, Wilma can be written with a V instead of a W. And he was correct, and he wrote it with W. The same thing with Teresa. We can write it with a Z at the end or S at the end. And he never would misspell a name, which is something very interesting. Two small possibilities that the medium knew about the facts. For instance, the person communicating that would do, the little Ouija board, like the glass that would then go and tell the letters. The Ouija board. Everybody knows about the Ouija board and the little cup that you put and Ouija board, yeah. And you then start going to letters and putting together the letters. And the child wrote about that Ouija board exercises that he used to do secretly at home, and the mother didn't know about that. And the other one talks about the Magne cave where he visited with his father, the Magne cave with his father, and that's case number 1. And that is the birthplace where the mother, the place where the mother was born, and he then reveals that through the message that he gave through Chico Xavier. Minimal possibility that the medium knew is, for instance, case number 1, a name of a priest, João de Santo Antônio. That was the priest's name. He came and embraced me on representing my ancestors. These priests had died 50 years before, and he was only known by the grandmother of the deceased, of the person communicating, and the family members had no idea who this priest was. And another very interesting piece of communication was case number 5, where this guy describes this physician, Dr. Guilherme da Silva, the sanitarian physician. He was taking care of him, and he died in Campinas, and he mentioned a physician that nobody knew about. And this physician had died in 1912. And the family members didn't know him. They didn't know who he was talking about. And this is very interesting because this boy died of meningitis, and he had to be operated on in the spiritual world. And he mentions that, and the doctors that took care of him in the surgery. Minimal possibility that the medium knew. This is a very interesting case as well. It's a strong piece of evidence and how serious these messages are especially of what is communicated, and it's communicated with certainty. There is no margin for error. For instance, another friend that is together here with me, Irineu Leite da Silva, this is the deceased talking, a fine young man who died last June. And that was in June. And he used a very typical expression in Portuguese. And I was among those who work in the Flamboyant Park, or the Flamboyant Park, when he was considered dead. And Jair was the person giving this message, and he was talking about Irineu, this colleague that was there close to him that had died in June and was there in the Flamboyant Park. And the sister of Jair, who received the message, went to the cemetery, the Flamboyant Cemetery or Flamboyant Park, where this person was buried. And she went and she talked to the administrator of the cemetery, and she said, listen, I'm here to find out if there is in your list here someone called Irineu Leite da Silva that would have died last June. So the administrator looked in the register and didn't find Irineu Leite da Silva there. So she went to the papers of Campinas, and she there found that there was the death of this gentleman, Irineu Leite da Silva, on June 7th. And then she went back to the administrator and she said, I'm sorry, but I have to be certain, because the newspaper says that this person died on June 7th and that this person was buried here. So Mr. Renato Manjaterra, the administrator's name, re-examined the list, and he indeed found that it was not Irineu, but Pirineu with a P before. That's why he couldn't find. And so the mediumship of Chico Xavier really corrected the records of the Flamboyant Cemetery.
And there was incorrect information that don't exist in all the questionnaires that were made and answered. And there's still 8 pieces of information to be reanalyzed. But in the analysis made in 1990, we already found out that 100% of correct information. Here, for example, we are correlating the number of words and the information, the messages. And principally, we're going to be able to confront what comes in this other information. That is, for example, Chico Xavier received some message or asking for some message. More than 76% Chico Xavier did not receive any message from anyone asking for that specific information. How many times were these people with Chico Xavier before they received a message? No times. And 2 or more times, 69.4%. The correlation between the number of times that the person was there with the medium and the number of pieces of information obtained is the same, whether he has been there before or not with Chico Xavier. This means that he did not put ideas in his head or didn't have information in his head to enlarge the messages or not. So the person would come several times, would go to Uberababa before he received the message, and a person who'd never been there before. The situation is exactly the same. The information that was obtained about the person who had been there before is 15.79, and the information from people who had never been there before is 15.88. That is, we mean to say that there was no superimposition or overlying of information, whether the people had been there before or not. There's no. We say that the discoveries obtained with the messages on this number. I believe that I'm not going to be able to go much farther about this because my time is running out. But I would like to tell you that Paulo Eduardo Teixeira da Silva, he died in the Air Force Academy in Pirassununga. It's a great academy in the state of São Paulo. And he tells, the report had been that he had committed suicide, but he tells his parents that he was on guard and he was cleaning his fingernails with his weapon and it went off. The parents did never accept the fact that he had supposedly committed suicide. They said he had no possibility of committing suicide, and he confirms this through the message. And then the other ones. Then there's the Alan Charles Padovani. He says in this letter that he had inhaled benzene because he thought he was going to die that year, and he was very upset with this, so he inhaled benzene, and that caused him to have a cardiac arrest. Carlos Teles Sobral Jr., he died in Portugal in the city of Cascais. In Portugal, it was considered to be suicide. But when his parents got to Ubirababa, they saw through the message that the son was transmitting that he had been murdered. But he didn't want his parents to open up the case again. Why? Because he said that the person who killed him was angry at him for a good reason, because he stuck him with things.
Pranks.
He did harmful games and plays with him. He did pranks on him, and so he was killed by that person. But he didn't want the case to be opened once again. Heitor Furtado, who was a federal deputy, was carrying out a re-election campaign. He was asleep on the back seat of his vehicle when a policeman came up, and he was scared, and at that very moment when he became scared, the policeman shot at him and he died. 40 days later, the husband went to the Ubirababa along with the father, and she sent a message, among other things, that he had not seen any evil in the eyes of the policemen. Why? Because they were from the opposition party. His father was afraid that it had been a political crime, and he wanted to carry it to the final consequences to clarify the reason for that death. And he said very clearly what had happened in the message. Roberto Muscati, a Jew, he gives Hebrew words in the message, which could only be read by the father, who was an orthopedic physician. He received the message with great emotion because the medium didn't know what the words meant in Hebrew. And then Hilda Mascaro Saulo, whose message you've already seen, was given in Italian. What are the conclusions that we can come to? That the letters received by Francisco Cândido Xavier reveal a large quantity of correct information. And the information with the minimal or very small possibility that the medium knew it leads to a significant means of conversations or research that brought out, the letters brought the information that led to conversations or research. We also have to increase the amount of information from the informants who were regular visitors to Uberaba. Some messages bring facts that were not known to the family. And then we discovered that there are no errors in the messages. Xenoglossy, as we have mentioned, messages in Italian or Hebrew. And we would need a great deal more research to understand this psychography phenomenon. But I wouldn't like to end before saying to all of you that the work of Chico Xavier as a psychograph, automatic writer, is very impressive. It's really something that would deserve scientific study that goes deeper. But I would also like to say to you that I have never seen in my life someone with so much love for humanity. The way that he received the message for those desperate mothers to hear messages from their children. His heart was full of love to console them. And this love is what made him become smaller so that the communicator could really express all of his love or her love for the mother, giving all the information that they needed to continue their lives, to go on. Sometimes they were torn apart by the death of a dear, beloved person, family member. It was an extraordinary job that he did, a man who did live for 92 years to bless, to console. If we could categorize him as one of the poorest, a person who went to pass through great need as a child, we can say that he transformed all of that into food for humanity, so that those who lived with him, and I had the privilege of living with him, of being alive with him, and I can tell you that I never saw a person who was so humble and so generous as he. This very small contribution that I'm bringing out is just a tribute primarily to the human being and the example of humanity, of charity, and of love for his neighbor. And I would very much like to have science to open its eyes, its lenses, its contribution to study this magnificent work that can only be carried out this way before a heart that was greater than the work itself that he received. Thank you very much.